In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Listen, folks, I'm here to tell you our political system is broken. The two-party system is dead. They have become one and the same.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host. Favorite host.
This is always the killer, the one that just destroys that never Trump argument. Hillary Clinton will fill the Supreme Court with liberals. She'll also appoint federal judges with a liberal bent to them.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
Arrogant, sanctimonious, self-righteous, sabotaging Trump.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford. I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of, much better than they're taken care of now. The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side. ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
What realized is that the Bill Kristols of the world, the never Trump people, they were just never serious. They never had any kind of ground game. They never had an actual candidate they could pick.
And in a surprising and disturbing move today, the Libertarian vice presidential candidate just agreed that rifles are weapons of mass destruction and people on the terror watch list should not be allowed to purchase guns. So in other words, the party of freedom is liberty for me but not for thee. Go figure.
Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree.
All right, folks, happy Tuesday evening. I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. I was with you live last night, but I know it was Memorial Day, so a lot of you were like, yeah, whatever, dude, we're taking the night off. We're enjoying the last little bit of freedom we have before the day job starts back up. So just want to give everybody a quick shout out. Hope you have a great holiday weekend. Hope you got to spend some time with your family, etc. I hope it was wonderful. I hope it was everything that you expected it to be. And I'm glad that each of you decide to tune in, whether you do so live here on KLNRradio.com or through iHeartMedia or one of the other multitude of places that this show can be heard, not limited to Spreaker, Stitcher, SoundCloud, FM Player, Red Nation Rising Radio, the Liberty Channel, SHR Media, AMFM247.com, and a bunch of other places. So many that we typically don't list them all. Now, just a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. First off, I have to give a hat tip to a former host with us, Miss Stacy Lennox, who recently, her and JD, the host of Game On, have stepped down from their show hosting duties. Right now their show's on hiatus. I'm not sure if it's going to be coming back. But in the meantime, she has actually restarted her writing gig. She actually used to write quite a bit when she was with War Radio, and now she's doing it again. Now she's writing for the Daily Surge. If you haven't looked at it yet, I do encourage you to go there and look for the article that she just posted today. It's titled "Uncle Sam Wants a Seat at Your Salary Negotiation." If you want a little bit of information about it, you can always check out the Jen and Rick show, of course, when this one's over. And then we'll at least give you a bit of an overview about it, but it is best that you still go ahead and listen to the show and read the article in its entirety. Sorry, can you tell I usually do radio because I keep trying to talk about an article, keep saying listen instead of read. So fun times. All right, so what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, let me tell you what we're going to talk about tonight. The fact that I'm still completely fed up with both parties, still not completely sure I want to have too much to do with the third party, but really at this point, what harm would it do to vote not them in 2016? That's my honest question, because look, we keep complaining about the system, we keep complaining how broken it is, yet we keep playing as part of the system and part of their rules. Everybody got so jazzed up over Trump because they thought that he was going to be the anti-establishment candidate. Well, you kind of missed the memo because he kept telling everybody over and over and over again that when he got to the point where he had the primary nomination was done and he was the party nominee, he was going to have no choice but to move towards the establishment. Now, why is that bad, you might say? Because these same people are the same ones that kept railing against the establishment. They've called Cruz establishment. They've called everybody but Trump establishment, as far as the GOP is concerned. And yet, when nobody was paying attention, he kept telling anybody that would listen to him, hey, at some point, we're going to have to move towards the establishment because it's the only way to get things done. And when they heard him say that, you noticed that the establishment's ears kind of all perked up. And they're like, oh, wait, this guy who's lambasting us right now just sent us a clear signal that he's going to work with us should he become the nominee. Which I guarantee you is why in the RNC, at the floor vote, you saw all the grassroots folks yelling, no, we want a floor vote, we don't want Trump. And the establishment, a.k.a. the party leadership, said, yeah, that motion doesn't carry, fellas. And gee, I wonder why, because he's been telling everybody for months that if he got the nominee, nomination or became the nominee, he was going to have to move more towards the establishment. Now, I have to talk to you about one other thing that has me kind of annoyed, and I'm not really going to call him out for it because he's been doing this longer than me, and he's been pretty clear that he's only doing it because he feels like he didn't have a choice. But I'm really disappointed in the fact that Mark Levin has now decided that he is, at least for the moment, going to vote for Trump. Now, he was at least cognizant enough to tell people, look, I understand you might not agree with my decision, but these are the reasons why I'm voting for Trump. And his reasoning is a lot like of a lot of my other friends, because everything that we see that Hillary has done, they're like, we have to stop her from getting into the White House. That's great, but do you not realize that in a lot of ways he's done many of the same things? He's just as guilty of lying. He's just as guilty of covering things up. He's just as guilty as bilking the American people and conning the American people, as proven so far by the whole Trump University situation. I mean, there's just something else that came across my timeline right as I was about to start the show. There's just more and more that keeps coming out about this Trump issue in Florida, because apparently, according to the Huffington Post, he then held a fundraiser for Pam Bondi at Mar-a-Lago after she dropped the investigation. So every time we turn around, there's more and more that's coming out about this Trump University situation, and more things that are making me look at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both and saying, I can't support either one of these idiots. How did we get here? What are we going to do to fix it? Are we going to continue to pick up the red banner or continue to pick up the blue banner and march off to war over and over and over again and continue to expect different results? Because I have to tell you, I'm not a fan of Gary Johnson at this point. I'm not a fan of some of the things that his vice presidential candidate has said, Mr. Weld. I don't like a lot of his stances. But the thing of it is, are we actually ever going to try to do something different? Or are we going to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again? Look, I have voted In every single election in my lifetime that I was old enough to vote for, I have voted Republican. From George Bush 41 the first time, or second time, because I wasn't old enough to vote yet in his first election cycle. But when he went up for re-election, I voted for him. I then voted for, hell, I don't even remember who ran against Clinton the second time. But I voted for them, because who's going to vote for a Clinton? Even now, I'm like, who's going to vote for Clinton? But I can't vote for Trump. I mean, this was the election that we could have killed it. We could have owned it, and look where we are. And then, I mean, every cycle since then, I have voted for the Republican nominee. The fact that I've done so, I'm 43 years old and have voted Republican every election since I turned 18, except this one, because I'm not going to do it because I can't. Because the system is broken, the election cycle is rigged, it's been a scam, we've been played. I don't know if it was intentional, if at some point Donald Trump and Bill Clinton had worked out this idea for him to run block, or if it was just one of those behind-the-scene phone calls where Donald Trump was talking to Bill Clinton, was like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm not even really doing this to get president. All I'm really trying to do is make sure that I get all kinds of free press to make all the news networks look terrible, and then I'm going to start a news network of my own, which is already in the works, folks. If you're not noticing that, then you're not paying attention. It's no coincidence that Bannon and Ailes are both now part of Trump's advisory committee. That I don't believe in coincidence in the first place, and even if I did, that would be a crazy one. And yet nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that one of Trump's surrogates, one of his what are they? The word escapes me for the moment. But one of his charitable groups, I guess, would be one way to put it, gave a contribution to a sitting attorney general in Florida. At the same time, that attorney general was looking into whether or not she was going to throw in with a class action, with a suit against Trump University that was started in New York. Now the story comes to light that apparently not only did he give her $25,000, he apparently also threw a fundraiser for her after she declined to do so. So this was at his 126-room Palm Beach resort Mar-a-Lago for $3,000 per person fundraiser. And this is just breaking today. And yet we keep hearing about how corrupt Clinton is, which I'm not disputing that fact, folks. That's the thing that nobody seems to understand and nobody seems to hear me say. I'm not saying she's not corrupt. I'm not saying she's not a liar. I'm not saying she should be POTUS. But I'm also not going to stand here before you today and tell you that he's not corrupt, that he's not a liar, and that he should be POTUS, because he shouldn't be. Because he is corrupt. Maybe not in as many ways as she is, but he is still corrupt. And he is a liar because he told everyone he was going to release his tax returns within 2 weeks of announcing his nomination. He didn't do it. And then he came up with his cock and bull story about, well, I'm not going to release them because I'm being audited. You knew about the audit the day that you told everybody you were going to release. So why didn't you just tell them, look, at this point, I'm being audited. I'm not sure when I'm going to release my tax returns or if I'm even going to, because it's not actually a requirement. You know what? It's no different than Bill Clinton sitting in the fishbowl with Congress standing in front of him. He's standing in front of Congress and they say, did you have sexual relations with this woman? No, I did not have sexual relations with this woman. Everybody knows he's lying. Everybody knows he's lying. So as an attorney, why didn't Bill Clinton look at Congress and say, hey, you know what? This is a private matter between me and my wife, and it will be handled as such. So for that particular question, I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment rights. Because I'm not going to lie in front of a board, but I'm also not going to answer your question. Because then I run the risk of possibly either incriminating myself or facing other charges, and I'm not willing to do that. I'm not telling you what I did and I didn't do because it's none of your business, but I will have that conversation with my wife. If Clinton would have done that thing, that one thing, which we went in to a pretty good detailed explanation as to why I didn't think he should have done that on last night's show. So if you missed it, or why I didn't think he did do that, not that he shouldn't have. So if you missed it, you may want to check it out on replay. But it's the same situation. He could have been up front and been like, hey, look, you know, I know it's a precedent, and I know I was on Romney about it, and I made this big deal about him needing to release his tax returns, but look what the media did to him after he did. So I really don't necessarily think it's a good idea, and not only that, it's not really required, so no, I really don't plan on releasing my tax returns. If he would have said that the first time that anybody ever asked him about it, I wouldn't have an issue with it. If he would have also said about his medical records, look, I understand that it's common practice for presidential candidates to release their medical records to assuage people's fears about health conditions. But it is not actually a law that I have to do so, and I'm not comfortable with doing that. That's all he had to say. But instead, we have these two big glaring issues where he's refusing to release his tax returns after he said that he would. He's also refusing to release his medical records after he said that he would. And because I'm that type of person who starts digging into things when they don't make sense, one of the first things that I found was a lawsuit that Donald Trump filed not too long ago. Then he actually lost the lawsuit with the judge that he filed because he refused to produce his tax returns. So why does Donald Trump continually have this issue with producing his tax returns? What is in there that he doesn't want anyone else to know, even to the point where he lost a lawsuit that he filed for defamation of character because an author called him a millionaire, not a billionaire, and he was insulted? So there was no way for him to prove the information because he wouldn't release his tax returns to the judge. So the judge finally said, look, either you give me your tax returns because there's a really easy way for us to tell whether you are a millionaire or a billionaire, and that's by letting me get a look at your tax returns. And if I find that he defamed you by saying that you're a millionaire when you are technically a billionaire, then you will likely win the lawsuit. But if you refuse to produce your taxes, then I'm going to throw it out. He refused to produce his taxes on a lawsuit that he filed. So again, why are we voting for either one of these idiots? We have one that is at least in some level responsible for the murder of 4 people. Now, it doesn't necessarily, I'm sorry, unlike a lot of you folks, I can't let the buck stop with her, because there was an entire administration involved in those decision-making processes, not just the Secretary of State. There was an entire government involved in those decision-making processes, not just the Secretary of State. But anybody else in that government process right now is not trying to get to be elected to the President of the United States. One of them who should have been more prominent than even her, is now on his way out the door and has faced little to no criticism over the fact that nobody could really find him during the Benghazi scenario, even though there have been unconfirmed and unsubstantiated reports that Valerie Jarrett may or may not have been one of the ones calling the shots during that particular scenario, because nobody really knew where Obama was, other than the fact that he was supposed to be in his quarters asleep during one of the biggest terror attacks we've had in our lifetime, short of the other September 11th, which is actually coming up here. And I guess they both are technically coming up here in about 5 days. So yeah, I mean, but the thing about it is, at some point, I'm coming to the realization that I somewhat agree with a lot of folks that are a little more middle of the road than I am, that are finally like, look, can we just stop with Benghazi at this point, because all we're really doing is making the lives of the parents that much worse, because it's in all of the news cycles, it's never not talked about, and it's apparent and obvious that nobody in the administration or the media wants to do anything about what did happen. And the same can be said for our government, because again, the bulldog of Benghazi blatantly lied to the American people after he released his report stating that there were inconsistencies but no basic wrongdoing by the Secretary of State or anyone else involved in the Benghazi incident, because of the fact that there was a miscommunication about whether or not there was an evacuation already underway. And then he lied and said that there were no assets in, near, or around Benghazi, when we know that to not be true. So again, why do we keep supporting this two-party nightmare? When are we going to finally do something to show this two-party nightmare that they're not our bosses? They were never supposed to be our bosses. We were supposed to be their bosses. And yet somehow they have everything flipped around to the point where they're telling everyone that they know better what we need than we do, and we should be listening to them, because they're basically our parents. Do you know how many people I hear that from on a daily basis anymore? Why are you talking bad about the government, Rick? They know what's best for us. They know how to take care of us. I've even heard prominent people like Chris Rock say that the president and the first lady are basically the parents for America. And we should listen to them when they tell us it's time to go to bed. We should listen to them when they tell us to do this. We should listen to them when they tell us to do that. No, actually, we shouldn't, because they're not our parents. We're grown. If we're not grown, then if you don't know who your parents are, then I'm sorry, it's not the White House, and it's not the people in the White House. I would be saying that whether it was a Republican, a Democrat, or a Libertarian in office. The president and the first lady are not, or in this case, the president and the first gentleman, which is kind of what it's looking like it's going to be, unfortunately. They are not your parents, or as I like to call Bill Clinton, the first man whore. Sorry, I kind of forgot about that until I said first gentleman. I'm like, wait, that didn't sound right. Oh, yeah, that's because I usually call him something else. But, folks, it's really simple. It's a really simple concept at this point. We have to decide what matters more. Continuing to pick up the same banner, march off and pull the same lever over and over and over again, crossing over and maybe pulling a different lever within the same two colors, whether it be red or blue, which is also pretty prominent in elections lately, because we have a lot of disenfranchised people on both sides. Or are we finally going to do something different? How hard is it at this point to finally decide enough is enough? When are we going to vote not them? When are we going to stop letting the media pick our candidates? Because look, I know a lot of you Trump supporters, and don't pretend you don't listen to the show, because I already know better, because I get your emails and your hate through Twitter, so don't tell me you don't listen, because I know better. But when are we going to realize that we keep letting the media pick our candidate? The media doesn't want our candidate to win in the first place. And yet we keep letting the media be the one to pick the candidate. And look, I have been in a protracted argument all day on Twitter over Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you guys on the air the same thing that I say every single time the question comes up as to whether or not I'm supporting Donald Trump or I'm supporting Hillary. I don't believe in the fallacy of the binary election. I think that's what's forced Mark Levin to be where he is, because with the following that he has, if he would have come out and said, look, I can't do it, and in this state, maybe he doesn't have the option to follow the write-in, so I'm going to vote Johnson, because at least it's not one of those two. Because either one of those two is nuts. But he didn't do it. I can't fault him for it, because I've never told anybody in their life who to vote for, and I'm not going to start now. But all I know is if I had the voice and the following that Mark Levin does, with the number of people that listen to him on the radio and watch Levin TV and read his books and everything else, the last thing that I would have done is folded and said, look, you can be mad at me if you want. I know I've been talking about principles now for the last couple of months, but this is why I think I have to vote for Donald Trump. I'm disappointed because I think ultimately he wound up doing himself more of a disservice than he even did the country, because a lot of the people that I know that were still listening to Mark Levin were listening to Mark Levin because he wasn't on the Trump train. He was being honest with people. He was showing them, this is what I know, this is what I've heard, this is what I see in the news, and this is why I can't vote for the man. And yet now here we sit, and somebody went from the never Trump, never Hillary column, or the not them column, as I like to call it, to the, well, I'm reluctantly voting for Trump because I don't see another choice. The simple fact of the matter is, folks, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get back from the break, this was the one time in probably the next few cycles that there were enough people disenfranchised and upset with either party's candidate that we had a real shot at a third-party run, and we just didn't get there. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I'm going to give you some information as to why I think we didn't get there, and ultimately what the future holds for us, because at this point I honestly don't know. At one point it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to run away with this thing. If you still look at 538.com, they still have her running away with it, but some of the polls are starting to shift. We have some folks that last week were talking about how polls were irrelevant now that the polls are putting Trump in a good light, are like, oh, look at this poll, it's great, and it's so accurate. I'll be the first one to tell you polls don't matter. Whether they're good, bad, positive, negative, whatever, polls honestly don't matter. Because you have to get a look at the sampling data to figure out if it's even worth a darn. All right, so anyway, when we get back, we'll talk about this some more. You are listening to America Off the Rails right here on KLNRradio.com. We will be back after these commercial messages. Do not go away.
Stay tuned. Things are going to get real interesting. You're listening to the Spark Radio Network.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live into the second half of the show already. My, oh my, where does the time go? And remember, this is going to be not the last and not the next to last, but the next to next to last live broadcast at 10 p.m. Eastern. 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 Central, here for America Off the Rails. Effective this coming Monday, the 12th, I believe. We will be moving to what is considered a primetime talk radio time slot. We're moving it more towards morning, afternoonish. So make sure that you tune in for the changes. We're also going to be slowly working on extending the format. Now, I have to admit, for the first couple of weeks, it'll probably be 2 hours with maybe a replay for the third hour for a little bit while I'm getting moved up into getting used to the 3-hour format. Within the first week, I hope to be doing as much as I can possible to do a 3-hour concurrent broadcast. What we may also do sometimes on the busier days of the week is remix some of the older interviews that a lot of the folks that listen during the day may not have heard and kind of mix them in and discuss them. Now that I have months of interviews with pro-Trump authors and anti-Trump authors that we can actually remix back in and say, well, this author at this date said this, and this is what's happened now. I think it might bring an interesting perspective now that we have the lens of history for some of these interviews to go back and look at them. So I do plan on doing some interesting things for the third hour, at least while we get used to the 3-hour format. Now, I have to admit that does also mean that we're going to be increasing our break times because we are working on moving the show more towards industry standards. So you will, of course, have the break at the top of the hour, the break in the middle, but then there'll also be the break right at the end of every hour, right before we change over to the next hour. And that's just kind of the way it's done, and that's one of the things we're trying to do is move this show more towards industry standards so that we can hopefully start marketing it a little bit more since it does continue to gain in popularity. Now, I want to go back to a couple things that were being discussed in the chat room. Now, I'm not going to mention any names, but someone actually called me out and said that Hillary was the one that did allow the security to be weak to start with. And yes, I know that is true, but my issue with all of that is there were plenty of times that could have been dealt with. It wasn't. Ultimately, there were also a lot of funding issues that may or may not be laid back at the feet of Congress. So this isn't just an all or nothing scenario for me. Because again, at this point, I'm not carrying the water for any party, and I'm looking at it all with a fresh perspective and saying, look, if they have been working together as much as they are in this cycle, and we missed it, how long have they been working together and we missed it? Because it's obvious, it's blatant to me at this point. And yes, I will also agree that that night was a series of cascade failures. The biggest failure was Obama deciding to go to bed instead of staying up and doing his job. So again, why is Hillary one of the only ones that's being called on the carpet for this? Because I understand she's Secretary of State. Ultimately, her department made a lot of the policies, but at the same time, it's still the president went to bed. All right, so anyway, back to what we were talking about before I changed gears for a second to respond to some folks in the chat room. What if we voted not them? Look, again, and I know I keep coming back to this to phrase it this way each time I change tacks a little bit, but it's a valid question, because when are we going to do something to make changes? When are we going to do something to quit doing the same things over and over again and keep expecting the same results? When are we going to stand up and say enough is enough? Because that's what a lot of us, because remember, folks, I've been honest with you from the beginning. For about 2.5 months, I considered buying a ticket on the Trump train because I listened to what he said. I heard him basically throwing around every other candidate anywhere in his vicinity, and I liked what he was doing. And then I realized the man doesn't have an off switch. He has no concept of bad press, has no concept of optics, and all he does is continue to make himself look more and more idiotic at every turn because he knows that that's how his base, he gets attention from them. So my problem with it, the more I watch this and the more I realize that at this point we have someone who could quite possibly be criminally insane, or we have the choice of a criminal. That's the binary election cycle that we have right now. We can either choose someone who should patently be a criminal or someone who could very likely be criminally insane. Those are the options that we have in front of us, unless we start looking at third party. Now, we have been working on trying to see if we can get Gary Johnson on the show. We've already had Nicholas Sarwark, the head of the Libertarian Party nationally, on the show a couple of times, so we've been trying to get Gary Johnson on. So far, not having very much luck, but we're still working on it. I'd also like at some point to sit down and interview Evan McMullen, who is a write-in candidate who has been picking up a lot of steam. I do have to admit, after listening to some of his interviews with Glenn Beck and some others, I find it a little interesting that he doesn't really have too much to say about ISIS, considering he is a former member of the CIA and couldn't answer some pretty basic questions that Glenn Beck was asking, which concerns me, to be honest, because we've had a lot of folks in we've had a president now for 8 years who basically was getting on the job training for the first 6 years he was in office, really had no clue what he was doing, had no idea how to do most of the things that he said he was going to do. All he really did was keep strutting around and telling everybody, hey, I won, elections have consequences, deal with it. And then we went into the whole Obamacare is going to be this wonderful thing and everybody's going to get to see the whole thing online and get to read through it, even the American people, before the decision is made. C-SPAN is going to carry all the debates so the American people can remain informed on that process. None of those things happened, and yet now we're looking at either putting Obama 2.0, as I call Hillary, or Obama 3.0, as I call Trump, into the White House and continuing those very same policies, both with the chance of us winding up with a dictator by the time it's all said and done, because we either have a choice of socialistic tendencies or authoritarianistic tendencies, and neither one of those things is good. And the scary thing is Trump is authoritarian leaning with some understanding about how socialistic policies should work, because he's even told everyone from the beginning that he's going to repeal and replace Obamacare. But what he's not telling anybody when he talks about that at his rallies is he plans on replacing it with something that will have a socialized medicine component. Now, I don't know if he's planning on socializing all of it or just for the folks that really, really can't afford it. But regardless, it's not something our country can afford right now. It's not. We've just had the Pentagon lose half of our national debt. The Pentagon has a dollar amount missing that is worth about half of our national debt. And we're talking about socializing medicine for the poorest among us when we already can't afford to pay our bills in the first place. And Trump's explanation is by the time he's done, the government's going to do such a great job with it that it's going to save the American people money. Gee, where have we heard this one before? Where? I think it's one of the things that we heard about Obamacare. Wasn't there a certain president who's currently in office right now, who shall remain nameless, who said that the Obamacare initiative was going to save the average American family at least $2,500 a year, and if they liked their doctor, they were going to get to keep their doctor? So why do we continue to trust the things that these blatant politicians tell us? And why is it that even though Trump has bought and paid for most of the politicians that are in Congress right now and has bought favors with presidential candidates, etc. over the years, why are we believing the things that he says? I mean, look, this is like the worst case of he said, she said ever, because they're both saying terrible things, they're both true, and they both suck. So this isn't a case of he said, she said, where one is saying one thing and the other saying the other, and it's one of those instances where maybe it's not quite what it sounds like. It is exactly what it sounds like. They both suck. Neither one of them deserve to be president, and yet somehow this is the election choice that we have before us. Do we pull the blue lever? Do we pull the red lever? Or do we break ranks and pull the yellow lever? Or do we go ahead and write in McMullen anywhere that we can? Because, see, folks, here's my conundrum. If it was up to me and my state recognized write-ins, I probably would write in McMullen, only because he aligns more with the things that I believe than even Johnson does. But Oklahoma doesn't recognize write-ins on the ballot, so you don't even have. It's not even an issue where you can put in for it and try to get enough signatures or whatever, and then you're there. No, we don't even have that option. Heck, we don't even have an option on our anything other than our primary ballot for anything other than. Well, I'm sorry, for the primary, we can't even vote for anyone other than our party affiliation. And the independent voters up until now haven't even been recognized as a party in Oklahoma, so they can't even participate in primaries because it's a closed primary with no independents on the ballot, and so they don't have anybody they can vote for. So now the Libertarian Party is actually on the ballot, and they've actually been running a few places for state government here, and they're working on trying to put actual senators in office and congressmen, etc., in D.C., and even trying to put somebody in for president. And the only reason that even though I have issue, as you can tell from the opening now, I have issues with every single major candidate that's running. I have issues with Trump, I have issues with Clinton, and I have issues with Johnson. The biggest issue that I have with Johnson is this gross hashtag that seems to have developed. I keep being hashtagged in the phrase "Feel the Johnson," and I'm sorry, that's just disgusting. It's not going to happen. That's gross. It's a very, very bad visual, and I keep telling anybody that uses it with me attached to it that they really, really, really need to find a better slogan for him. I mean, come on, hashtag slip DC the Johnson would be better than feel the Johnson, or even make DC feel the Johnson. That at least puts the connotation of grossness where it belongs, which is in the cesspool of DC. But the thing is, at this point, again, I don't align with a lot of the things that he says, but he's actually on my ballot. And it's a choice that I can make that gives me the ability to keep my promise, not to you, my listeners, but to myself, that I couldn't support Donald Trump and I couldn't support Hillary Clinton if it came down to that. Because I can't do it. And it's not because I'm sitting here on a high horse and because I think I know better than you guys and I'm smarter than everybody else. That's not what this is about. That is because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I have to be comfortable with the choice of who I make for president. And I have held my nose and voted in the last several cycles, and I'm not comfortable with doing that this time. I'm really not. At least if I'm going to hold my nose and vote, I might as well hold my nose and vote for something new. Because the thing with Johnson is the Libertarian Party actually probably for the first time in a very long time had a chance to foster a movement. They had a chance to start beginning to make changes. And the problem is the Libertarian hierarchy, because they don't do primaries like the Republican and the Democratic parties do. They actually have their nominations there at their convention, like all the parties used to do. And they made a conscious decision that they were not comfortable with all of us conservatives that were coming over and trying to find the home of the Libertarian Party, because the Libertarian Party doesn't consider itself either conservative or liberal. They are fiscally conservative and more socially liberal, so they have policies from both, so they don't really consider themselves one or the other. So one of the things that was actually decided upon at that convention was Austin Peterson, even though he was very popular and he was bringing a lot of conservative attention into the Libertarian Party, they didn't necessarily want the conservative vote, or if they got the conservative vote, they wanted it to happen on their own terms. So they opted to float Gary Johnson, and then they brought Weld in as the vice presidential candidate because they felt that he was a very strong candidate to kind of help some of the more wishy-washy things that Gary Johnson has in his platform, because Gary Johnson's basic platform is, hey, carbon tax may or may not be a good thing because I can't decide, and everybody should be able to get high. You know, and I don't necessarily have an issue with that either, just in a moment of full disclosure. I have friends that I have watched in my life that have tried to stay away from things like pot because it's illegal. So they will find all of these synthetic substitutes that, at least for the short term, are considered legal because they're not intended for human consumption, but they're still sold. And how these companies get away with it is they mark for the bag, not mark on the bag, not intended for human consumption. And then what happens is Congress will outlaw that particular list of ingredients. So for a moment, all of it has to be pulled from the shelves. But then you guessed it. Whoever's manufacturing it goes in, they change a single ingredient. All of a sudden, Congress has to start the process all over again. And this stuff that they call K2 or synthetic marijuana is so much worse than the regular stuff that at this point, as much as I'm opposed to it, I honestly think that we need to make it legal for several different reasons. It would put these idiots out of business. It would put a lot of the cartel business under. The crime rate pretty much everywhere would drop immensely because the majority of our crimes right now are drug related. And again, if you didn't listen to last night's episode, you really need to look at how in depth and ingrained and mixed in with a lot of our drug problems the CIA has been for the last 70, 80, 90 years. Look, I have problems with all of this because ultimately we are supposed to be a free country, but we're not. We have all of these rules, all of these regulations, and again, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not even a minarchist, but I am a small government guy. What I am is the federal government should stick to the things that it was allowed the power and the authority to do as outlined in the Constitution. If we're going to change that, then we need to change the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution does it talk about a lot of the things the federal government is currently doing. Nowhere in there does it talk about this most recent article that I was talking about that Stacey Lennox, who used to broadcast with us, and apparently now is a recurring co-host on the Michael Loftus show, so I guess technically she still broadcasts with us. So that's kind of cool. I guess she really didn't leave after all. But anyway, that's a little bit of a different story because Michael Loftus is syndicated, not actually a direct part of the station, but we still run him every Thursday night at, I believe it's 8 Eastern. So yeah, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. So make sure you check that out. Usually Michael's pretty funny. If you haven't checked out either his podcast or his TV show, you really need to. But I kind of got sidetracked there for a second. Sorry, I was chasing squirrels. You know, it happens. Even talk show hosts occasionally have ADHD. But back to what we were talking about a moment ago. Now there's this whole big push to have the government more involved in what you make or how much you make when you go in for job interviews. They want to track how much you're making on a regular basis. They want to compare it to females that are in the same work type as you and make sure that everybody's getting a fair and equitable wage. Look, folks, even if you think that's a great idea, that type of data collection is going to be bad because it's not going to be any different than what I said about the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act, on the face of it, when it was passed, seemed like a really good idea because it was a way to make sure that the American people stayed safe. It was a way to take the gloves off when it came to collecting information about potential terrorists. But the problem with legislation like both the Patriot Act and this one is you have to think for a second, okay, so maybe I'm okay with it right now. Maybe my side has the power. Maybe I trust them to do the right thing with it. Maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal. But then you need to think, in 4 years, in 8 years, am I going to be okay with that then possibly Democratic or even Libertarian or Republican, depending on the circumstance, having the same type of power that the administration that I support and align with has now? If the answer to that question is no, then we should not keep allowing things like this to happen. And that's why I have a problem with where we are today. Because nobody looks at anything more than 2 moves down the board anymore. They're worried about what's going to happen today, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next month. They're not looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, which is what a lot of us that have been opposed to things like Obamacare from the beginning were saying, hey, you're not looking at the long term here. Because eventually what this is going to do, because what it's designed to do, is put insurance companies out of business. So at some point when they all crumble or they all stop following it, because look, folks, there's only now, I think 1, maybe 2 insurance companies that are going to be nationally available for Obamacare this next time go around. I think it's 2 now? So they're getting to the point where there's about to be no insurance companies that are even going to be eligible to be used in the program. What do you think is going to happen then? And do you think it's going to be any different under President Trump or President Clinton? Because it's not going to be. They're going to say, okay, so folks, at this point, since we can't get this to work as a hybridization between socialization and capitalism, because we've been trying to leave the middleman in the middle, but more and more of them keep pulling out. So now we're going to have to figure out a way to make this all paid for by the government. And that's what they've been working for all along. I've been warning people for nearly a decade, and so have other people, because even Glenn Beck came up with the same idea right around the same time I did. I don't know why he and I always seem like we're pretty close to on the same page, because I promise it's not because I'm trying to copy anything that he says. But we both, around the same time, came up with the concept of what a lot of people don't seem to understand about Obamacare is no, it doesn't get us immediately to socialized medicine. But think of it like you're trying to build a house. Obamacare is the framework of the house. It's the frame. So it's the first thing that you need to be able to put the rest of it together. And either under President Trump or President Clinton, they're going to put more of the pieces together to continue working on the house. Trump is going to do it by making sure that the least among us can actually get medical coverages and it's paid for by the government, which on the face of it sounds like a really good idea until you realize that that means the government's pretty much going to have control of what procedures they can have, when they can have them, whether the government can afford them, etc. And those are the things that I've been trying to get across now for almost a decade. I mean, it's not quite a decade, but it's getting pretty close. We're rounding the corner. At this point, I honestly can't remember. We're either rounding the corner to year 8, or we're, and I think that's kind of where we are. I think we're at about 7.5 now. It's been so long, and I've done so many different projects over the last nearly 8 years that honestly I've kind of lost track of time more than once, and I keep having to go back to find other dates of when I first made posts, etc., to find out when we actually started. So at this point, it looks like it is coming around to 8 years. It'll be 8 years in, it'll be full 7 years in November, because I started all of this the year after Obama got into office. So I guess we are rounding year 7, not year 8. But the point that I'm trying to get across to you folks here is, what's it going to hurt to vote not them? Especially if you're in a position where you can actually make a statement and also, like me, maybe help a third party get onto the ballot. What's it going to hurt to vote not them? Look, my state has 7 electoral votes, so in the grand scheme of things, it's really not going to matter very much. Also, not only that, but in the last election, it went 77 counties red. So I seriously doubt, even if 15% of the folks say, you know what, we really want other choices, so we're going to go ahead and vote Johnson, if nothing else, just to make sure that they get on the ballot and stay there, I don't think 15% of the vote's really going to make that much of a difference. Now, it might, because another reason why I'm still kind of wondering whether or not Hillary Clinton is going to be our next president is, for the first time I think I can remember in my lifetime, I'm actually seeing Clinton or Democratic presidential ads in my state, which is kind of scary in and of itself, because we typically don't have them here. So that just tells me exactly how confident she is with all of the different states that have the potential to become swing states because of Donald Trump and his craziness. But again, it's just one of those things. We tried to tell everybody that there was a good shot that if he became the nominee, he wasn't going to win. There were several of us that said that we couldn't support him, and at the same time, we were basically told, well, we don't need your vote anyway, except now we're being called traitors and rhinos and everything else if we don't vote for him. But anyway, folks, at this point, we are officially out of time, so I need to make way for the Rhino Report here coming up next, right here on klnrradio.com. If you're listening to us on one of the other affiliates, make sure you check listings for who's coming up next, and make sure you stay tuned wherever you're listening, because there's lots of other great content, not just always me. Although it does seem like I'm doing a lot of radio lately, but I enjoy it, so why not? And I will be back with you live tomorrow night. Don't forget, we have the Conservative Curmudgeon up here at 8 Eastern. Then we have Jess's POV. And then we're probably going to do an encore of some kind between the hour of 9 and 10 Eastern. Or wait, no, I'm sorry, 10 Eastern, because I'm on at 11 Eastern. Sorry, I'm Central Time, guys, so it gets late at night, and half the time I don't even remember where I am anymore. But I've got to get out of here. We've got the Rhino Report coming up next. You guys don't go away. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. God bless.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. Later.
Game over, man. It's game over.